Senator Case, this one's for you. Senate Enrolled Act number 64.
Senate Enrolled Act number 64, being original Senate File 50, Insurance Holding Company Regulations Amendments, an act relating to the Insurance Holding Company System Regulatory Act.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 64, being original Senate File 50. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 65.
Senate Enrolled Act number 65, being original Senate File 52, Insurance Amendments, an act relating to the Insurance Code.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 65, being original Senate File 52. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 66.
Senate Enrolled Act number 66, being original Senate File 97, Trust Code Revisions, an act relating to the Uniform Trust Code.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 66, being original Senate File 97. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 67, excuse me.
Senate Enrolled Act number 67, being original Senate File 100, Child Witness Courtroom Procedures, an act relating to criminal procedure.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 67, being original Senate File 100. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 68.
Senate Enrolled Act number 68, being original Senate File 102, Surviving Parents of Gold Star Veterans Exemptions, an act relating to taxation and revenue.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 68, being original Senate File 102. I have so signed. And Senate Enrolled Act number 69.
Senate Enrolled Act number 69, being original Senate File 158, Virtual Credit Cards and Network Leasing Dental Services, an act relating to the Insurance Code.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 69, being original Senate File 158. I have so signed. Looks like we have a concurrence request, message number 452 in regards to Senate File 196.
Message number 452, concurrence requested referencing Senate File 106, Second Amendment Protection Act amendments.
Can you read it again, Randy? You said 106, it's 196.
Correction. Message number 452, concurrence requested referencing Senate File 196, Second Amendment Protection Act amendments.
Thank you, Randy. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move concurrence of message 452 and urge you to vote aye. Honorable members, the other chamber actually did a great job. They only strengthened the bill. Much of this is technical amendments, but let me go through it. There were two technical amendments. One was on page 1, line 4, after penalty, they provided severability of provisions. And then number 2, page 1, line 11, they added an additional graphical error, I guess. They deleted and restated everything from page 2 and put it onto page 3. The simple new language was brought, renumbering and conforming changes. And then they did add 1-39-124, which is the Wyoming Government Claims Act. They added the word solely on page 3, line 17. This was requested by law enforcement to feel more comfortable, which they did. They also added peace officer on page 4, line 6, This was to keep everything in the bill equally applicable to public officers. They fixed a typo on page 4 to employees. They clarified on page 4, line 6, that the existing criminal penalties are in Wyoming law apply to peace officers. And then finally, they fixed a typo on page 9, line 4, the word including. So they did good work. They made it stronger. And with that, Mr. President, I ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think most of the changes are just fine, but the severability clause, I think that got put back in. And, you know, one of the things that I think we discussed this session was the idea that the severability clause is native to statute. And the idea, I understand that sometimes we're getting draft requests and model legislation from out of state that includes the severability language. I felt like we, and I could be remembering a different bill, I felt like we took this provision out of this bill for that purpose intentionally, and that this is it being put back in. I guess my request would honestly be to resist concurrence and just go get that severability taken out, because it's bad form for us to be putting the severability language in every bill that comes through, since we already have that, and I believe Title VIII, but I could be misremembering where it's at. And that is intentionally to govern all of statutory construct so that the severability is there, so that when the court looks at it, it would automatically do this already. I think it's bad form for us to now start introducing it in statute, ignoring Title VIII, and ending up in a situation where I guess a court should at some point wonder why we keep shoving this into new statutes when we've got it in Title VIII. What is different this time would be my concern. So I'd ask the sponsor, and again, I don't know that we want to resist just for this, but I think it would be worth going down the hall and saying, come on, knock that off, and then we'll go back and concur. That would be my preference, Mr. President.
Further discussion, Senator Scott.
Mr. President, on against concurrence for exactly the same reason. I think this policy of suddenly starting to put severability clauses in is going to impugn the value of the Title VIII general severability. And I think it's best to put a stop to it sooner rather than later. We did in another bill, we ought to do it here too.
Further discussion? Anybody else for the sponsor? Not seeing anybody. Back to you, Senator Salazar.
Well, I definitely want to succumb to the wishes of the Senate. So I will ask you to vote for non-concurrence. Get this done quickly. Thank you.
All right. The motion is Senate do concur on Senate File 196 and vote no. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence vote Senate File 196. Anderson? No. Barlow? No. Boner? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? No. Crago? No. Crum? No. Dockstetter? No. Driscoll? No. French? Aye. Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? No. No. Hutchings? No. No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. No. Nethercott? No. Olson? Aye. Aye. Pappas? No. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Smith? No. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
No.
No. French, aye to no. Salazar, no to aye. Pearson, no to aye. Closing. Smith, no to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Concurrence of Senate File 196, 5 aye, 26 no.
By your vote, you have failed to concur on Senate File 196. Joint Conference Committee Number 1 will consist of Salazar Chairman, Nethercott, Beitman. Concurrence on Senate File 51, message number 454.
Message number 454, concurrence requested referencing Senate File 51, Wyoming Telecommunications Act revisions.
Oh, Senator Case, I was daydreaming there.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Hope it was good, buddy.
It wasn't.
I would move message number 454, the concurrence request to Senate File 51, Wyoming Telecommunications Act revisions, and I would ask the Senate to vote aye. As you recall, we had a debate on our side about whether prepaid wireless should be in there, and we took it out, and that took out several pages of the bill, but we left a couple of little references to rulemaking that was required by the Department of Revenue to implement a tax on prepaid wireless phone service. And we should have taken that out over here. It was a good catch. I'm not sure if they were smart enough to do that over there, Mr. Chairman, or if our staff did that, but it was a good catch. So they just took out requiring rulemaking, and they took out section at the very end where the Department of Revenue promulgates rules, and they also changed the effective date because the effective date had been effective immediately for part of it to give the department time to do rulemaking. That's not necessary anymore. So and now we have the effective date of July 1, 2025. Ask you to vote aye. It's a good bill.
All right, discussion on the concurrence. Seeing none, the motion is that the Senate do concur on Senate File 51 and vote aye. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence roll call vote, Senate File 51, Anderson? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Craigo? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? No. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Aye. No. Jones? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 51, 28 aye, 3 no.
By your vote, you have concurred on Senate File 51. Message number 453, referencing Senate File 17.
Message number 453, concurrence requested referencing Senate File 17, carbon dioxide enhanced oil recovery stimulus.
Senator Anderson, you ready to go on concurrence on Senate File 17?
You bet, Mr. President. I didn't realize it was 453. Wow. It's a big one.
Big one.
And it's been read in, Mr. President.
Been read in, go ahead and move it.
Mr. President, I move passage of message number 453, Senate File 17, and ask for your favorable consideration. What the House did was they put in appropriation for, they put it, instead of the Department of Revenue, they put in authority, and the authority is defined as the Wyoming Energy Authority. So that's all that did. What they did, they added section 3 at the end, and it's of the funds appropriated by section 323A of 2024 House Bill 1, $10 million shall be utilized for the design and engineering of a project that burns, combusts, or gasifies Wyoming coal. Project designed under this section shall be physically located in the state of Wyoming. And that's the whole amendment. Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
All right, discussion on the concurrence. Let's go to Senator Rothfuss first.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, on and against concurrence, and I support the first choice. The second one is, in my view, substantially outside the scope of the original bill, and this was an attempt to bring a budget amendment that I believe I supported, just to be clear. It's all good budget amendment. It's just that it's not germane to the bill, and I think we're going to see countless concurrence requests that have budget amendments that are not germane to the bill because the budget failed, and so the attempt is to find the nearest, and this does deal with things that burn coal. So there's that. But certainly outside the scope of the original bill. And I think it's really important, Mr. President, that we respect the process and we respect the constitutional requirement for the language to be consistent with the title of the bill and germane to the bill for us to approve it. I think it's appropriate for us to appoint a conference committee. I'd be happy to serve on it, to go down and work on getting that stripped out. This bill is an exceptional bill. It would be a shame to invalidate the bill in some way because it's gone through a process that's unconstitutional.
Thank you. Further discussion? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, if you go back to section 323 of the 2024 budget, it talks about what this is, and there's $100 million in that particular line section, and then it talks about all the things that it can do. And this is matching fund, Mr. President, matching fund, private or federal dollars. So what we're doing is we're trying to find, if it's under the same terms and conditions, we're trying to find someone to match us up to $10 million to learn how to burn coal. We've got several of those places around the state of Wyoming. I don't know that we need to burn coal differently. And maybe I'm missing something, but one of the most up-to-date and modern plants in this country is in my community. And then as far as the burns combust, I guess somebody can help me with that. And then gasifies, certainly there is, I think, work being done already, the state of Wyoming, to do that. So what we're really talking about is, having this carved out of a grant program that's in the budget, which I will remind this body was repealed in a bill we actually passed last week. The entire section was repealed. Now, I don't know what might happen downstairs, but if you'll take a look at Section 9 in House Bill 152, it says, Chapter 118, Section 323 is repealed. And that is somewhere between this floor and then on a different floor. So kind of interesting that we would be carving money out of something that may actually be repealed. But for those two reasons, I would resist this amendment as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Senator Ide.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'm on and against concurrence on this for different reasons. This bill provides financial aid to private companies, which is not the proper role of government. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I am on and for concurrence, and I want to address the issue of constitutionality. And so when we look at that in the context of outside the bill title, so what we've seen here by trying to stick the budget into a number of bills, we've contorted bills, we've twisted bills, we've shoveled bills, and we've shoehorned bills. and the question of constitutionality comes up. But Mr. President, in my time, this has always been a question. We may have had this question a couple of years ago with the constitutional amendment that left here as a particular property tax relief for elderly and come back and said it's a fourth class of property. And the argument was made then. And so here's the fundamental thing. When you look at these things, you have to make a determination because ultimately it's you that determines whether it's germane and whether it's constitutional, and that's your decision. That's how we determine germaneness and constitutionality. You gotta exercise a little common sense once in a while. You gotta take in all the circumstances surrounding what you're doing, but at the end of the day, that's your decision. We can debate it. We can ask for a ruling from the chair. We can go to Rules Committee. But historically, this body has always recognized your ability to cast your vote, whether you determine whether something's germane or whether it's constitutional or not. And in my time here, I've seen that vacillate all the way across the board. But you also have to exercise a little common sense. And you also have to take into considerations all those other constraints, information that's available that you have as to whether this issue is germane. But at the end of the day, make no bones about it. That's your determination. And there's a legal remedy for that, folks. But that's not us. The legal remedy is if somebody really feels so compelled that we were so wrong, then they can file a lawsuit. And in my time here, I haven't seen that happen just yet, that there was a ruling on this. The courts have given tremendous latitude to the legislature to make a determination of what constitutes germaneness, for the very reason that it's your vote and your determination. So, on and for concurrence, I do think that's your vote, and I do think you should exercise your own common sense and you make a determination of what's germane and what's constitutional. On and for concurrence.
Anybody else on concurrence? Senator Dockstead.
Mr. President, there is a point there. Is our vote. I look at that. It's a stretch, maybe it's not. Design and engineering, project that burns, combusts, or gasifies. I think it's within the realm. I'll be on and for concurrence.
Anybody else? Senator Rothfuss for your second time.
For my second time, look, I understand when you want something to pass because you like it, then everything's constitutional. I mean, that's a philosophy that we can have, but is that an appropriate philosophy? It doesn't seem like it's an appropriate philosophy. And again, getting back to the fact that we can respect the process and we can respect the institution and we can respect our oaths of office where we swear to uphold the Constitution, or we can recognize that there's no one out there to stop us until it goes to the courts. That's a legitimate interpretation, Mr. President. It's not the one I hold. I don't think it's the right interpretation for us to take because, again, we swore those oaths, but it's factually accurate. No one's going to stop us. We're the legislature, and unless somebody actually goes to the trouble of filing a lawsuit to enjoin the use of this $10 million over the next year, I think we'll get away with it. I agree. I think we'll make it. We'll get across the finish line. We'll spend the $10 million before a court can stop us. Go team. Mr. President, that's not how I think this chamber should roll. And it's at two levels. It is a constitutionality, but we do have, Mr. President, a rule. We dealt with this the other day, where it can be deemed out of order, that component of it. Again, we still end up voting on it. But at this time, I would appeal to the chair, since we're going to this discussion and going to debate, pursuant to Senate Rule 11.6, scope of amendments. I would appeal to the president that this violates Rule 11.6, which says that pursuant to Article 3, Section 20 of the Wyoming Constitution, no bill shall be so altered or amended on its passage through the Senate as to change its original purpose. So I'd ask for that ruling, Mr. President.
Senator Rothfuss, I would rule that this $10 million appropriation is out of order in violation of Rule 11-6.
11-6. So at that point, Mr. President, I'd ask everyone to vote no.
Okay. All right, the motion is that the Senate do concur on Senate File 17 and vote aye. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence roll call vote, Senate File 17. Anderson? Aye. Aye. Barlow? No. Boner? Aye. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Crago? No. Crum? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? No. French? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Olson? No. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Smith? No. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 17, 12 aye, 19 no.
By your vote, you have failed to concur on Senate File 17. Senator Anderson, will you get me a conference committee at your earliest convenience, please, so we can get that appointed? All right. Takes care of those. Joint Conference Committee reports. Message number 387, referencing Joint Conference Committee number 1 to Senate File 86.
Joint Conference Committee Report Number 1, referencing House Message Number 387, referencing Senate File 86, Alternative Teaching Certificate. Ayes, Representatives Andrew, Strzok, and Thayer. Senators Larson, McEwen, and Olson.
Senator Larson.
Mr. President, thank you. Do I need to move that
Yes.
conference? I move Joint Conference Committee Report number 387 to Senate File 86 and ask for your aye vote.
Senator Larson, can you move Joint Conference Committee number 1 report?
Oh, sorry. I move Joint Conference Committee number 1 report to Senate File 86.
Thank you.
All right, now I got it. And ask for your aye vote. We went down and discussed the amendments they made on their second reading. We had to delete all those and insert some of the stuff they suggested, some of the amendments. So on line 12, after program, we inserted or pathway. On line 19, we did the same. After program, inserted or pathway. And on line 20, that the after district is still deleted. It's stated without a prior request by the superintendent, so that's not in there. And then we inserted on line 18, after deleting, after successful completion of, we inserted if the applicant is enrolled in or completed an alternative certification program. So that's what we did, and I'd ask for your aye vote.
All right, discussion on the Joint Conference Committee report. Seeing none. The motion is that the Senate do adopt the Joint Conference Committee number 1 report to Senate File 86 and vote aye. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Joint Conference Committee Report Number 1 to Senate File 86. Roll call. Anderson. Aye. Aye. Barlow. No. Boner. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Case. No. Cooper? Aye. Craigo? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Joint Conference Committee Report Number 1 to Senate File 86, 28 aye, 3 no.
By your vote, you have adopted the Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report referencing Senate File 86. Bills on third reading and final passage. Madam Majority Floor Leader, do you have a consent list for us?
Mr. President, I move third reading consent list as follows. House Bill 83, Child Custody Sex Offense Conviction Presumption. House Bill 136, Volunteer First Responder Health Insurance Revisions. House Bill 147, Prohibition of Institutional Discrimination. House Bill 207, Religious Freedom Restoration Act. House Bill 279, Property Tax Exemptions Order of Application. House Bill 318, Maintenance of Voter Lists. House Bill 337, Prohibiting Foreign Funding of Ballot Measures. And House Joint Resolution 3, Support for Rural Schools.
Would anybody like any of these bills removed from the consent list? Seeing none. Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? House Bill 83, Child Custody, Sex Offense Conviction Presumption. House Bill 136, Volunteer First Responder Health Insurance Revisions. House Bill 147, Prohibition of Institutional Discrimination. House Bill 207, Religious Freedom Restoration Act. House Bill 279, Property Tax Exemptions, Order of Application. House Bill 318, Maintenance of Voter Lists. House Bill 337, Prohibiting Foreign Funding of Ballot Measures. And House Joint Resolution 3, Support for Rural Schools. The Chief Clerk will call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson? Barlow? Boner? Brennan? Case? Cooper? Craigo? Crum? Dockstetter? Driscoll? French? Guru? Hicks? Hutchings? Ide? Jones? Cole? Landon? Larson? McEwen? Nethercott? Olson? Pappas? Pearson? Rothfuss? Salazar? Schuler? Scott? Smith? Steinmetz? President Beitman?
Aye.
On the consent list, 31 aye. House Bill 83. Are there any changes? Case, aye to no. Rothfuss? Aye to no. Brennan, aye to no. Closing vote. Oh, Guru, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 83, 27 aye, 4 no. House Bill 136, are there any changes? Aye? Aye to no. Larson? Aye to no. Hutchings? Aye to no. French? Aye to no. McEwen? Aye to no. Case? Aye to no.
Bateman, no.
Whitman, no. Salazar, no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 136, 23 aye, 8 no. House Bill 147, are there any changes? Case aye to no. Rothfuss, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 147, 29 aye, 2 no. House Bill 207, are there any changes? Case, Rothfuss, aye to no. Case, aye to no. Guru, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 207, 28 aye, 3 no. House Bill 279, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 279, 31 aye. House Bill 318, are there any changes? Rothfuss, aye to no. Case, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 318, 29 aye, 2 no. House Bill 337, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 337, 31 aye. And lastly, House Joint Resolution number 3. Are there any changes? Case aye to no. Aye. Aye to no. Larson. Aye to no. McEwen. Aye to no. Nethercott. Aye to no. Landon, no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Joint Resolution number 3, 25 aye, 6 no.
Having received the affirmative. Do I have a microphone? Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, House Bill 83, Child Custody Sex Offense Conviction Presumption. House Bill 136, Volunteer First Responder Health Insurance Revisions. House Bill 147, Prohibition of Institutional Discrimination. House Bill 207, Religious Freedom Restoration Act. House Bill 279, Property Tax Exemptions Order of Application. House Bill 318, Maintenance of Voter List. House Bill 337, prohibiting foreign funding of ballot measures, and House Joint Resolution 3, support for rural schools, have passed the Senate. Bills on third reading. House Bill 47, third reading of the House bill.
House Bill 47 engrossed. Secretary of State expedited filing, sponsored by the Blockchain Committee, an act relating to the administration of government.
There is an amendment. Would the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
House Bill 47, third reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 1, line 4, after.
Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 47. Folks, if you remember back, we eliminated a position out of here because we thought it was out of line. And this brings back in a section that actually came out of the budget on both sides. I'll be dead up front with you. What this does is puts $500,000 back into the Center for Blockchain to automate the Secretary of State's office. Ties right in with what they're doing, and it'll help alleviate the problems there. I'd stand for questions and ask for your favorable consideration.
Discussion on the amendment. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you remember, this was just for expedited filings, this bill, and it was just that $5,000 for expedited filings. So I would challenge the germaneness on Rule 11.6 and ask for a ruling from the chair.
One second, let me pull up the bill here. Sure, Senator Driscoll.
I'll talk a tiny bit about germaneness. I'll go right back to the bill, and the bill had in it an actual position for this. It had a position in it. And your committee stripped that position away, and it is very germane. If it had a position in it and it was asked for it, came from the other body that way, I believe it's very germane as far as being a piece of the Secretary of State's office.
Senate will stand at ease until the sound of the gavel. I need to read this before I make a decision. Okay, Senate will come back to order. There was a request for me to rule on the germaneness per Rule 11-6. I would rule that this amendment is in violation of Rule 11-6. Anybody is free to challenge that, but that's what I've decided. So, Senator Driscoll.
Mr. President, I'd ask to withdraw third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 47.
Okay. Absent objection, third reading amendment number 1 has been withdrawn. We're back on the bill. Discussion on the bill? Seeing none. House Bill 47 having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Third reading roll call. House Bill 47. Anderson? No. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Craigo? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Case, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 47, 29 aye, 2 no.
House Bill 47 having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, House Bill 47 has passed the Senate. House Bill 62, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 62 engrossed prostitution amendment sponsored by Representative Heiner, an act relating to crimes and offenses.
There's an amendment. Would the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
House Bill 62, third reading amendment number 1 to engross copy, page 1, line 3, after.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 62 and ask for your favorable consideration. Senators, as you know, I really don't like this bill. And it's being brought on the hope of providing another tool to law enforcement because they are unable to adequately investigate these massage parlors that are really avenues for human trafficking and other prostitution-related activities. And so we're criminalizing both the women and the men, adding further criminal enhancements to those and adding additional crimes associated with that activity in order for law enforcement to have the tools in the toolbox to investigate them, which I find completely unpersuasive. However, recognizing that that argument is not successful, I do think it's important to have the law enforcement report back to the Joint Judiciary Committee all of those massage parlors of which they will be able to now investigate, because this law is going to go into effect immediately, unlike any other criminal statute I've ever seen, which provides notice of July 1st each year. So since this is going to go into effect likely in the next couple of weeks, they should be able in the next 6 or so months to really take out these massage parlors with this very valuable tool in their toolbox. So I'd like for them to report back to the Joint Judiciary Committee November 1st of this year and every year thereafter to report back on the efficacy of these new crimes associated with prostitution in our state. Thank you, Mr. President.
Discussion on the amendment. Senator Landon.
Yeah, Mr. President, on and for the amendment. This may actually have the bill make sense to me. There are legitimate therapeutic massage services out across the state. I know of 2 of them. And frankly, I wondered when this hurried through on Friday, Thursday, whatever day it was, I wondered if that was going to affect that industry, which I think we just licensed here not long ago. So on and for the amendment.
Thank you. Senator Hicks, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so my question for the bringer of the amendment is so once we get this information and then it's reported to the Joint Judiciary Committee, my first question is was there any conversation with the chairman to see if they have time to take the report? And then after they get the report, what are they supposed to do with it? So just a little clarification on those 2 points would be helpful.
Anybody else before the bill or the amendment sponsor? Anybody else before the sponsor? All right, to you, Senator Nethercott, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do think that the Judiciary Committee, the number one committee, tasked with always reviewing actions of law enforcement and our criminal code, will have the time to receive a public report that all the legislature can see to understand whether or not these laws that we're putting into place are having the results we're actually hoping. So I'm very, very confident in the abilities of our Joint Judiciary Committee and their ability to receive a report.
Okay, we're voting on third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 62. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The amendment has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Division being called. All those in favor, please stand. A lot. $25. All right, third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 62 has been adopted. We're back on the bill. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I rise in the bill because I'm confused on this bill. Mr. President, I'm sure it's well intended, trying to deal with this particular evil. But we had a fairly lengthy debate in Committee of the Whole, and we've discussed it a little more. And I will say particularly to the attorneys in the Senate, that I am confused about this bill as to whether it really will, as a practical matter, help in dealing with this issue, or is it going to add an element of confusion into our laws, Mr. President, that will detract from our ability of the law enforcement and the prosecutors to deal with this effectively, and will just make enforcement of statutes in this area just that much more difficult. So I am asking for further enlightenment, Mr. President.
Thank you. Anybody wish to speak on the bill? Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you remember, there's already a crime for the people that have these establishments, but if this isn't put into statute, then law enforcement can't effectively deal with these parlors that are doing these kinds of things. There is an element of trafficking that could be involved, and so if it's not a crime, they're not able to take care of it, and that's what this does, is it categorizes that. It also exempts out the person that would be in human trafficking, so they wouldn't be convicted of a crime if that were the case. So we think it clarifies, and we hope that you'll vote for this good bill.
Thank you, Senator. Anybody else wish to speak? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm also on the bill, and I just kind of doing a little research. The state west of us they've really had an issue with this, and you know, they're kind of being reactive to it, and they're having a lot of issues. And I don't think they had any idea that the proliferation of these kinds of things were going on in a state where, you know, it's fairly religious. So I think, it's good for us to be proactive instead of reactive. And again, also keep in mind that with that Safe Harbor Act, I think it protects the victims. And that's really what I think I'm more interested in than anything else. I also want to help law enforcement as well. So on and for the bill.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against the bill. Mr. President, we passed a few years ago an incredible act on human trafficking, and it's only been in statute for, I think, 7 years, maybe 6 years that we passed that. It was the appropriate solution. It empowered our law enforcement to fight human trafficking and to specifically target the human traffickers and convict them of crimes and put them in prison. That's a great approach. They're the ones that are perpetrating a crime. They're the ones that are abusing these women, and they're the ones that should be prosecuted. The idea that this bill is about fighting human trafficking just does not seem credible to me. We basically punish the victim. And I do understand the safe harbor concept. I understand that it's in there. So if it proves that they were being human trafficked through some complicated legal process, they can find their way out of jail. So that's handy. But at the end of the day, excuse me, at the end of the day, that was unintentional. At the end of the day, the existing statute focuses, we lost the majority leader. Yeah, it is, it's a Tony moment. Good old Tony Ross, Senator. At the end of the day, what we have in statute right now focuses on what the situation needs to be focused on. It provides and empowers our law enforcement with what it needs to be focusing on. This legislation does quite the contrary, and I see no evidence, we've heard no anecdotal evidence, no data evidence that will actually stop human trafficking. All I see happening is that we end up prosecuting women that are in unfortunate circumstances and making them either misdemeanor convicts or felony convicts, and I don't know why we need more of that. We're basically gonna fill up our prisons and our jails with women that are actually in need of support and help, potentially, rather than the people that actually perpetrated a crime. So with that, on and against the bill.
Thank you. Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President. I'm not a co-sponsor on this bill, but I am the chairman of Judiciary, so I watched this bill go through our committee, and I wish, for those of you who are grappling with this bill, I wish that you could have been present to hear the testimony. We heard from our associations that represent police and sheriffs, and they support this bill. They believe it does give them a tool in the toolbox to help them prosecute the right people. We heard from our Attorney General's office. They believe this bill will be helpful. We heard from the organizations that represent human trafficking coalitions in Wyoming, and they think this bill would be helpful. So we advanced this bill to the floor because all of the necessary parties involved really do think that this bill is going to give them the tools that it's not. I don't think that they're representing that it's going to give them the tool. It's not that it's the only tool, but it's going to give them another tool in the toolbox. And we talked significantly about this, Mr. President. The safe harbor provision is just so critical. I don't think that that law enforcement takes that too lightly. I think they understand perfectly well what the safe harbor provision does, and I don't think our prisons and jails are going to be filled up with the victims. That's the whole purpose of the safe harbor provision, is to guide and instruct law enforcement that there is no criminal liability attaching to the victim of human trafficking, and therefore you should not issue an arrest of that person. You should arrest the guilty party. And so, Mr. Chairman, I just think that we should advance this bill, especially given the report that we now have attached to it, because we can get a report from law enforcement and we can decide what to do from there. And if there's no activity occurring and there's absolutely no prosecutions, or they're not closing down these illicit parlors, then we can always come back as a body and we can deal with the law at that time. And if we do get those reports and we dive deep into them and we do happen to see that it's not weighted properly and victims are the ones who are being prosecuted, then we absolutely can revisit this. So I think the reporting mechanism gives us that safe feel as we move forward, that we have something to rely on as we examine this legislation in the future. But again, everyone we heard from really thought this was a good opportunity and a good tool, so I just urge it forward, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't want to, continue to add more time to this bill, but I have seen, as a member of the Judiciary Committee for a long time and been part of the criminal justice community for a long time, these trends that happen, and everyone gets in a groupthink kind of situation, and these laws start passing or these efforts start passing precipitously, and they don't necessarily make the most sense. Because I've been in this area of the law for a period enough time to have seen the exact opposite, where there was a huge movement to decriminalize the prostitution-related crimes, the women who were impacted. And that resulted in significant changes with the crime, with the human trafficking of these women. Of course, this was the 90s, and so the people involved in the effort today may not remember those efforts. And so you see these cycles and patterns associated with all of the popular topics in the criminal justice system, knowing that this crime is not a new one, and no crimes really are. Prostitution being the oldest activity in humankind, and human trafficking of women typically also part of that. And so here we see this flip backwards to where we are going to criminalize every type of sexual contact, which means the woman will be charged for every type of sexual contact related with this exchange. And so then how does that happen? She is charged with the crime, and then she's forced to tell information. That's, I think, the easy button for law enforcement, as opposed to doing any other type of investigation. Again, I certainly don't support this crime. I don't support the human trafficking of anyone, including these women that are very vulnerable. I disagree with those law enforcement professionals. Some of them, I know some of them don't. I disagree with some of those victim advocates and those nonprofit organizations who think this is the answer. I disagree with them. I think that they're wrong. I don't think that this will result in any meaningful tool that law enforcement doesn't have. And I do think that women will be charged with crimes, with that threat of a crime hanging over their head, a conviction of prostitution, no less, that they will be compelled to cooperate and identify all the people involved in that human trafficking ring, which is really important. I have no doubt about that. But I do think that there will be significant collateral damage, and I'm not sure it will achieve the results that we're seeking. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Nobody wishes to declare a conflict, because that would be awkward. Okay. Since then you're ready to vote, we're voting House Bill 62, having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Third reading roll call, House Bill 62. Anderson? No. Barlow? No. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstader? Aye. Driscoll? No. French? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kolb? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Olson? Aye. Pappas? No. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 62, 17 aye, 14 no.
House Bill 62, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, House Bill 62 has passed the Senate. House Bill 137, third reading of the House bill.
House Bill 137, Revisers Bill, sponsored by the Management Council, an act relating to the revision of statutes and other legislative enactments.
Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. President. Absent objection, I respectfully request that House Bill 137 be laid back one day.
Senator Nethercott.
Mr. President, just a point of inquiry for the body, this, and for the public that is very interested and excited about the revisers bill being not on the consent list and being laid back for one day. LSO has identified just some additional revisions that need to be added to the revisers bill. We hope to have those tomorrow. That's all that's happening. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Well, since Senator Grew respectfully asked, without objection, it is laid back for one day. House Bill 183, third reading of the House bill.
House Bill 183, engrossed, net metering amendments, sponsored by Representative Heiner, an act relating to electric utilities.
There's an amendment. Would the reading clerk please read it in? Oh, somebody wants my attention. It sounds like Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that House Bill 183 be laid back one day.
All right. Absent objection.
Respectfully.
Yeah, I'll let it slide. House Bill 183 is laid back for one day, respectfully. House Bill 219, third reading of the House bill.
House Bill 219, engrossed, county and municipal roads on state lands, easements granted, sponsored by Representative Locke, an act relating to state lands.
There is an amendment. Would the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
House Bill 219, third reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 1, line 2 after.
It's like Senator Kolb, your name's on it.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 219 and respectfully ask for your aye vote. And let's just, I guess you can look at how it tracks in. Obviously, we're trying to fit this into a bill that moves the state shooting complex forward. Just like to give the body a brief history of what's going on here and where we're at and why this is a good thing. Well, it started off with the State Shooting Complex Task Force, made a recommendation to JEC and the governor for its selection as Park County as the site for the state shooting complex. The city of Cody and Park County Board of County Commissioners established the Wyoming State Shooting Complex Joint Powers Board. In December of 2024, the State Land Board approved the lease of approximately 2,000 acres of state school trust lands to the State Shooting Complex Joint Powers Board. This lease will generate significantly higher lease payments of these lands to the common school income account. There are over 7 miles of roads of various sizes and conditions on state lands leased by the State Shooting Complex Joint Powers Board. Roads will consist of both county roads and roads operated and maintained by the Joint Powers Board. The amendment specifies how the county and Joint Powers Board could obtain perpetual easements for any other of these roads. In December of 2024, a consultant was hired to prepare a design and layout of the state shooting complex. The overall design is currently 10% complete. The plan layout of the location of roads, buildings, and shooting bays, ranges will be completed in the next 45 days. Currently, this project is slated to start breaking ground on roads, shooting bays, and other earthwork in late May of 2025, within the next 90 days. There's also collaboration of just under $6 million with other partnerships and businesses pitching in for this project. Construction costs are not getting any cheaper. They're going up every single day. This project has been approved at numerous points in time by this body. I think we find ourselves trying to make this thing move forward and to save money. And with that, That's the reason for this amendment, frankly. I think we've heard the conversations today about, what people are trying to do to save a project, because we don't have a supplemental budget. What we have is what we have. And this is something that I think rises beyond the average, shoehorning, and to the point where this is, in my opinion, really a positive thing for the state of Wyoming. It is putting us at the forefront. And for those that might say, well, what are we doing, moving this kind of project forward? Well, we don't live in a state that has a million people living next door, do we? But we do live in a state that is pro-Second Amendment. We live in a state that we have firearms manufacturers and growing all the time. And it's a positive thing, because this is a national event stage, not a local shooting range. This is national. It's much, much, much bigger than that. And we just don't have the draw nearby to say that we could get all these folks in there to support the facility in an outright manner. But we can, as a state, promote this for the entire state. And that's everybody in this state will benefit for many reasons with travel and tourism. And that's another reason why there's $3 million out of a project budget for this purpose. So, on and for this, respectively ask for your aye vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Gold. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, for my first time, this is a long journey to get here, and so I just want to give you a little background. This is something that this body started 2 years ago. We passed legislation and established a task force. Almost every one of your communities at one time expressed an interest in this facility. We had over 10 different originally people that come to the meetings to set up the task force. We put out on LSO's website to ask the people of the state of Wyoming what they were interested in the state shooting complex. We had hundreds of replies. We had people from 22 out of 23 counties. We had people from 6 different states come in and say, you guys build it and we will come. In fact, this process took 2 years of establishing those criteria. It was very competitive, went through there. Mr. Chairman, if you look at the context of what we're trying to do here in both economic development and education, you've got a brochure handed out on your desk that talks about one of the fastest growing industries in the state of Wyoming is firearms and outdoor manufacturing. One of the fastest. University of Wyoming just released a report. The 3rd fastest growing outdoor sport in the state of Wyoming is shooting sports, Mr. President. This is important to the state. One of our neighbors to the south that's pretty anti-Second Amendment had a similar type of facility, but all these national shooters will get over 400 to 500 people at an event. In one event down to the south, over $2 million was spent in that community in one weekend. This is a giant economic driver for not only recreation in the state of Wyoming, but then we talk at the implication for youth. So I got the numbers today from the department. Kids involved in shooting sports in the state of Wyoming last year were just under 3,000 in archery and shooting sports. It's a tremendous opportunity. Part of this facility is designed for the education of those youth. And maybe we can help host one of these national 4-H shooting state competitions that those kids from other states can come to Wyoming and help build this. We get this built, I would guarantee you that by the time a kid goes from 1st grade to 12th grade, we're going to have tens of thousands of kids that are going to go through this facility, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I know it's going to come up because it's pretty apparent as to whether this meets germaneness or not. And so based on a previous conversation we had, Mr. Chairman, we talked about what's it germane to the bill. Obviously, at some point in time, somebody could challenge this under the rules and say it's not germane. But when we look at the title of this thing, and it says an act relating to state lands, the State Land Board approved a lease of 2,000 acres for the construction of this facility back in December of 2024. That application has been approved for 2,000 acres. On that 2,000 acres, because that was done in 2024, there's over 7 miles of roads out there that now, based on this bill, is a determination as a gray area. Are they eligible to be grandfathered in because there was a lease approved in 2024? You look at the content of the bill, it says January 1st, 2025, there's a new provision for new roads. This clarifies that any of those roads out there on this existing facility that either will become county or joint powers board roads, which is a joint powers board between the county and the city, are eligible for this grandfathered in, and the bill says, no, you will have to follow the outlines within the bill as guidelines, just like if you were coming in with new roads. Mr. President, I don't know how you get any more germane when you talk about a state land lease, prescriptive easements and easement requirements on this. Mr. President, this amendment is germane to the bill. Mr. President, this is a good thing for Wyoming. My colleague here behind me, when we were here earlier, to show you the impact that these things have, we had a member from, I believe, the Greek delegation was here and came in here, and he saw that shooting complex thing sitting right there. He said, oh my gosh, you guys are going to do something like this? As a manufacturer of firearm accessories, he was excited with the idea that at some point in time, he might be able to come and host an event here in the state of Wyoming, Mr. President. This is consistent with everything we do. I'm going to tell you, it's very important to the state of Wyoming and the legislature. Back to my colleague, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. Support your Appropriations Committee. This was passed out by the Appropriation Committee. It was part of the budget bill. That budget bill passed this body. Support the body. This is important to the state of Wyoming. It's important to the future of Wyoming. And let's just be consistent within the state of Wyoming that if we voted for it out of appropriations, we voted for it out of the budget, it's passed the budget. This is the vehicle, Mr. President. I'll get back to this on my second time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Cooper next.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you to the great orator from the Snake River. What we're down to here, folks, is integrity. My old dad used to say, you tell me what you can do and then you do what you tell me. Well, we told these folks this is what we were going to do. It's time for us to step up, turn these funds loose. They've already been appropriated. Let's do what we told them we would do. Stand by our word. I think that still means quite a lot in this room. Let's move this forward.
Thank you. Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. President. Here we are again. This thing's jumping around all over the map. We go from a water bill to existing roads we're trying to get easements on. You know, I'm not the professor of germaneness here, but I've got some oceanfront property in Arizona that somebody in here might want to buy if you think it is. You know, and there again, it's, you know, I applaud the effort on this, but it's a private sector deal. I mean, we don't want to nationalize or hear national this, national that. We shouldn't be in the business of shooting ranges in the state. I mean, this is a private sector endeavor. It should be. You know, ski areas should be, golf courses should be, shooting ranges should be. They should all be private. And I mean, I'm on and against this. This is kind of jumping around looking for a home, and it doesn't belong here. That's for sure. This is a simple little bill to kind of clean up some things with the state land office and the municipalities and the counties. And now we got a $10 million appropriation on this. I mean, I think it's wrong. And you know, if this does pass, I mean, I'm on the bill. I'm the only senator on this bill. I'm voting against the bill. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Ide. Let's go to Senator Rothfuss for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. President, for my first time. And I appreciate the creativity to link the amendment to the bill, but it isn't germane. And I'm going to call for a ruling in a moment from the president. But let me just say, we have a process and we can trust the process. A few years ago, this body and the body down the hall passed a bill in one day. It's very doable. It requires a suspension of the rules, a lot of rules. No short list of rules. That'll be a motion I certainly don't have memorized, Mr. President. We can get that written up. We can get a bill drafted. If 2/3 of this chamber supports, and I support it, I'm an aye, supports this approach of getting this funding appropriation over to the shooting complex, we can pass it with 2/3. We take it down the hall, we get them to do it. I'm going to assume that that other chamber, Mr. President, would support suspending the rules and getting a bill done in one day. We have a solution, we have a process, trust the process. I'll get that bill drafted, we'll get it done. This is not germane. This is not the process, this is unconstitutional. Mr. President, I would ask for a ruling pursuant to Rule 11.6 on whether this amendment is germane, and if it's not germane, I'd ask that you call it out of order.
Senator Rothfuss, you've asked for a ruling. I rule this does violate Rule 11.6 and is out of order. Senator Hicks.
Parliamentary inquiry. Based on your rule, and I understand you ruled it's not germane and it's out of order, but could you provide an explanation of specifically what provisions in the amendment that you found that were inconsistent and made this not germane to the bill? And I'm just asking a question. Is that something that could?
Senator Rothfuss.
The chair is under no obligation to provide an explanation. If you want to go to Rules Committee, the Rules Committee usually is under an obligation to provide an explanation, and then we can certainly do that. But a chair ruling is exactly that. It is a ruling that they don't need to provide context for.
Okay, back on the bill. Discussion on the bill. All right, do we have another amendment, or is that it? No, that's it. Randy, do you have a second reading? No, just one amendment. Debate on the bill. Senator Barlow, you look confused.
Point of order, Mr.
Yes, sir.
President. So Senator, my good colleague behind me left the room, but there's still a motion on the floor on the amendment, it seems. So it either has to be withdrawn. I don't think just ruling it out of order is adequate to dispense with it, but maybe I'm incorrect. Glad to be corrected. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. President?
Senator Rothfuss.
My apologies, step out for a second. If it's deemed out of order, there is no amendment. The amendment's gone. The motion is out of order, and therefore there is no motion. That is its current standing. It could be appealed to the Rules Committee, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I've conferred with the chief clerk, and that's her take on it as well. Discussion on the bill. Question being called. House Bill 219, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Third reading roll call, House Bill 219. Anderson? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 219, 31 aye.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, House Bill 219 has passed the Senate. House Bill 228, third reading of the House bill.
House Bill 228, Prohibition on Private Funds for Conducting Elections, sponsored by Representative Knapp, an act relating to elections.
There is an amendment. Would the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
House Bill 228, third reading amendment number 1, page 3, lines 1 through 3, delete.
Senator Craig.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 228 and ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. President, last week we talked a little bit about polling places that might be out in the middle of nowhere, and sometimes they end up in people's homes, people's garages, maybe even people's barns if you're far enough from town, a couple hours from town. I know of a couple of these types of polling places, and I know that's not the intent of this bill, but just to make clear that we can continue to use those private properties for polling places, I brought this amendment, and so all it's doing is adding a line that says, nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit the use of private real property for purposes of use as a polling place as provided by this election code. It's pretty simple, straightforward, just making sure we're going to continue to allow our rural voters to use the same polling places they have for years. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. President.
Thank you. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, on and for this amendment, the polling place where I vote, which is the Red Creek School, is normally held in the public school, which is the only public building in the precinct. And some of the people involved would have to travel more than 60 miles to get to the general polling place in town. So it's valuable to have it. The local community has always stood up and managed to find poll workers that the county clerk can employ to operate the poll. But we had one year, Mr. President, where the school was, I believe it was under repair, or the single wide that is the school was being replaced. And in the primary election, Mr. President, we didn't have a place. So one of the neighbors volunteered the garage that was built into their home, and that worked just fine. And this does protect that sort of thing because it does happen in these rural areas.
Thank you, Senator. Let's go to Senator Steinmetz next.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a great amendment. Thank you for bringing it. Please vote aye.
Okay. Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, I'm curious as to what this federal funds is that we're saying they can use the acceptance and expenditure of federal funds. I didn't realize we had any federal funds in our county elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Let's go to Senator Scott. He'll answer that for you.
Yeah, Mr. President, we have on occasion had significant federal funds, particularly when we had to replace a whole lot of voting machines because of problems discovered with them nationally. There was, I forget the amount, but it was significant that we utilized, so that can happen.
Senator Landon.
So, Mr. President, thank you. You know, I was driving the other day and almost broke out laughing on this issue. Of course, we dealt with lots of election issues in this session, and at one point we were visiting about chairs, you know, and forcing the clerks to provide chairs for everybody because we're getting more and more people around the polling places. And I realized that on this bill, you have to be careful who's going to provide those chairs. And the example was given in the county of Fremont. Over 300 chairs are going to be needed to take care of each of those precincts, for example. So in relation to this bill, Mr. President, I'm just saying, I think there's more to this than we've maybe thought about in these short days. I get it, you know, that there's it disallows somebody rich from coming in and buying an election somehow, but there's a lot of other impacts on this bill too. Anyway, thanks, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Anybody else wish to speak on the amendment before the sponsor? All right, to you, Senator Craigle, for your second time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just to tack on to the answer from one senator from Natrona County to the other one who brought the question, that's actually language that's already in the bill, but the way we drafted the amendment, we did the two carve-outs together. So that's not new language, that's in the bill, and we just brought it down and into this new subsection. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We're voting on third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 228. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. The amendment has been adopted. We're back on the bill. Discussion on the bill. Seeing none. Having been read three separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Third reading roll call, House Bill 228. Anderson? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Craigo? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Guru? Hicks? Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Guru? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 228, 30 aye, 1 no.
House Bill 228, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, House Bill 228 has passed the Senate. Conference committee appointments. Appointment to Joint Conference Committee 1 regarding Senate File 17. Conferees are Senator Rothfuss, Chairman, Senators Nethercott and Anderson. Thank you. Anything else, Ellen? Wow, that clears the desk. Oh, wait, Randy's got something here. Messages from the House are burning a hole in Randy's pocket.
Mr. President, the following messages are dated February 28, 2025. Message number 425, concurrence passed. The House did concur, Mr. President, on Senate amendments to House Bill 156, proof of voter residency, registration qualifications. Ayes 54, noes 3, excused 5. Message number 424, concurrence passed. Mr. President, the House did concur on Senate amendments to House Bill 192, public utilities, wildfire mitigation, and liability limits. Ayes 57, excused 5. Message number 426, Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report adopted. Mr. President, the House adopted Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report on Senate File 74, immunity for drug overdose reporting. Ayes 55, excused 7. The following messages are dated March 3, 2025. Message number 446, third reading passed. Mr. President, Senate File 50, Insurance Holding Company Regulations Amendments, passed the House on third reading. Ayes 49, noes 10, excused 2. Message number 447, Mr. President, Senate File 52, Insurance Amendments, passed the House on third reading. Ayes 54, noes 5, excused 2. Message number 448, Mr. President, Senate File 97, Trust Code Revisions, passed the House on third reading. Ayes 60, excused 2. Message number 449, Mr. President, Senate File 100, Child Witnesses Courtroom Procedures, passed the House on third reading. Ayes 60, excused 2. Message number 450, Mr. President, Senate File 102, Surviving Parents of Gold Star Veterans Exemptions, passed the House on third reading. Ayes 60, excused 2. Message number 451, Mr. President, the House passed on third reading Senate File 158, Virtual Credit Cards and Network Leasing Dental Services. Ayes 40, noes 20, excused 2. Message number 453, concurrence requested. Mr. President, Senate File 17, Carbon Dioxide Enhanced Oil Recovery Stimulus, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 55, noes 5, excused 2. The House respectfully asks the Senate to concur. Message number 452, Mr. President, Senate File 196, Second Amendment Protection Act amendments, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 53, noes 7, excused 2. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur. Message number 454, Mr. President, Senate File 51, Wyoming Telecommunications Act revisions, passed on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 60, excused 2. The House respectfully asks the Senate to concur. Sincerely, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Randy. Senator Nethercott, looks like we have some very special guests here today. Would you like a privilege of the floor?
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor.
The floor is yours.
Good senators, we are honored here this afternoon. This is the longest mic I've ever seen. We are honored here this afternoon to be joined with the Director General, Daniel Chen, of the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Seattle. They just came to town today. And senators, as you may know, Wyoming has a trade office in Taiwan, a remarkable partnership, and they come and join us annually. And today is the day. I'm glad that we have some time this afternoon. Director Chen, if you'd like to come forward and take the mic.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. I hope my short remark can serve as break to your busy schedule. I still have a memory about last year. I stood over here, talking about the relations between Wyoming and Taiwan. So here I'm again. So I'm going to brief you the progress and the prospects. So to begin with, so Honorable President Biden and Honorable Senators, good afternoon. It has been once again my immense pleasure and privilege to stand before you, and I'm deeply grateful for your joint resolution in support of Taiwan, signed in this esteemed office and chamber. The Wyoming State Legislature steadfast backing, rooted in the same pioneering spirit that built this great state, bolsters Taiwan confidence as we confront the challenges posed by Chinese Communist Party. So on behalf of the people and the government of Taiwan, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of you for your unwavering support and enduring friendship. So Taiwan stands in a pivotal position at the heart of Indo-Pacific region and also on the front line of US-China keen competition. As I report to you right now, consider this. 92% of the advanced chips are produced in Taiwan, and 50% of the global maritime transportation, the trade passes through the Taiwan Strait. The consequences of a conflict in this region will be unimaginable, threatening and cause a catastrophic damage to global economy. To avert such a crisis, Taiwan is committed to self-defense and preserving the status quo. So your resolution sends a strong will, sends a very powerful message of solidarity, enforcing our resolve to uphold democracy. So this year marks the 41st anniversary of our sister statehood. So over the past 4 decades, our complementary and mutual beneficial partnerships has flourished. From the establishment of your Wyoming Trade Office in the Pacific Office, and also from the educational exchange, driver license reciprocity agreement, and also to the presence of your great Wyoming beef, raised with this rugged individualism in this region, on this land, to Taiwanese dining tables. So looking ahead, I envision expanding efforts of Wyoming agricultural products and energy resources to Taiwan, paired with Taiwan semiconductor and technological expertise, which will definitely benefit Wyoming. So in emerging sectors like quantum technology and green energy present exciting opportunities for collaboration. Policy-wise, I know Wyoming is famous for your good environment, your low-tax environment. So I think this good environment and Taiwan's role as an Asia-Pacific gateway can further enhance investment and trade between Taiwan and Wyoming. So I'd like to thank you so much, and thank you again for your resolute support and dedication to democratic values. Your frontier courage strengthened us both. By continuing to deepen our multi-faceted relationship, we can forge a brighter future for Wyoming and Taiwan. Thank you for your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Chin. Thank you so much. We appreciate our relationship with our brothers and sisters in Taiwan, and we look forward to continuing and enhancing our trade with Taiwan. They're an important trade partner, and I hope to see us do more of that. And we stand with you in freedom. God bless you guys. Thank you. Well, Madam Majority Floor Leader, I think we're out of work.
Mr. President, I move that we stand recessed until 4:10.
4:10.
4:10. So you don't forget, 4:10.
Today?
Today.
Okay. Just checking. 4:10 recess.
Just think we should spend some time together. 4:10 p.m. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Any announcements? Do we have any joint committee announcements for the good of the body here, or the listening public? Seeing none?
Nope.
All right, you've all heard, oh, Madam Majority Floor Leader.
All right, Mr. President, I move that we stand adjourned until 10 a.m. March 4th on Tuesday, tomorrow. Thank you.
You're going to have to withdraw your first motion, I think, Madam Majority Floor Leader.
I don't think it was voted on, but I will withdraw that motion, and I make a new motion, Mr. President, that we stand adjourned until Tuesday, March 4th at 10 a.m.
Okay, 10 a.m. All right. Oh, Chief Clerk? Okay. Just making sure. Okay, announcements. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, the Minerals Committee, House and Senate, will meet for internal or interim planning on noon Tuesday. That's tomorrow, 3/4. I believe it's E5. It's number 5 room. I think that's east, not the west, at noon. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder, tomorrow morning, joint agricultural committees will be in the Capitol Extension Auditorium at 8 a.m. to host the annual Forest Health briefing with the National Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other announcements? All right, see, oh, Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your joint conference committee on HB 154, I think it's 154, will meet at 9:30 in room 113, 9:30 tomorrow morning. Oh, cripes. Oh, it's on the back? Oh, here it is. Let's see, no, it's not. I don't see it.
I'm guessing it's false voting amendments.
Yes, false voting amendments. Thank you.
All right, House Bill 154, false voting amendments, will meet at what time?
Tomorrow morning,
Tomorrow morning at?
9:30,
9:30?
113.
113. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements? Seeing none, you've all heard the majority floor leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Senate will adjourn until 10 a.m. Tuesday, March 4th.